We can unfragment more fragmented inventory than you may think. We can measure hard to find or low incidence conditions in a very granular way, more than you'd think.
We're seeing brands really be receptive to the idea that everything in their media and marketing plan needs to be measurable, and it needs to have a consistent and meaningful measurement framework right from the top.
Recorded live in Cannes at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. It's the MM+M podcast in partnership with IQVIA Digital.
Welcome. You're listening to a special edition of the MM+M podcast. I'm Steve Madden. Today we're going to be talking about measurement everywhere, promises, proof, and the path forward. We're talking about how measurement is evolving in healthcare marketing from something brands investigate after the fact to something much more foundational to how decisions get made, campaigns are optimized, and value gets created in real time. Joining me today is Justin Rosen, head of measurement product at IQVIA Digital, and Scott Ensign, Chief Strategy Officer at Butler. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Both of my guests bring deep experience across healthcare media, data, and strategy. Together, this conversation will explore what it really takes to measure effectively in a world where fragmentation is increasing, data sets are multiplying, and marketers are under more pressure than ever to move quickly and prove impact. While that's happening, at the same time, the stakes are shifting as pipelines move toward more targeted therapies and smaller patient populations. Measurement's no longer just about scale. It's about precision, responsibility, and trust. Emphasis on trust. So what does measurement everywhere actually mean? I'll start with the big picture. Measurement everywhere is a phrase that I hear all the time, and it captures where the market appears to be heading. But it can mean different things depending on where and when you are in the ecosystem. Justin, we've heard the phrase measurement everywhere coming from IQVIA Digital, among others. But what does that mean in practice? How does it reshape what clients are expecting from measurement today?
Yeah, I think when I say measurement everywhere, the best way to summarize it would simply be that it is a core integrated part of your marketing program, of your marketing strategy. It's not an add-on. It's not at the end we'll see. It is part of the approach. The way you plan your strategy should have measurement in mind. It should be take into account the challenges of the pharma marketing ecosystem right now. You mentioned a few already. Signal breakdown, fragmentation, things like that. And best of all, most importantly, it should be integrated into your workflows. The way that your marketing strategy is actually implemented and the way that you bring insights back into your thinking should be in your own tools, with your own investments in people and tech, rather than just a sort of standalone deck that you can, procure and use as a one-off. It should be ongoing, it should be integrated, and it should be trusted.
Scott, let me bring you in on that. From your perspective, are the brands and organizations that you work with ready to operationalize the vision that Justin outlined, or are they still treating measurement as something adjacent to the work rather than embedded in the work?
Yeah, I think both of those things, depending on the brand that you're talking about and the maturity curve that you're on. I think there are a lot of things in the pharma marketing space specifically that are still barriers to doing what Justin is describing. And what Justin is describing is the way that we should be approaching it. I mean, the stakes for pharma marketing are actually quite high in a lot of ways. I mean, First of all, you have a highly regulated environment. There's a lot of risk built into the system. I think as a result of that, you've seen a legacy playbook in pharma marketing that you want to take advantage of the opportunity, reach as many people as possible. And, as Justin says, treat measurement as something that you do once all of that has occurred. And it's kind of like a nice little history lesson that you look at as a report when it's all over. But I think given that the stakes are so high, the amount of effort and time and money that it takes in the pharma space to bring a molecule to the point of commercialization is really mind-boggling. And so we're seeing brands really be receptive to the idea that everything in their media and marketing plan needs to be measurable, and it needs to have a consistent and meaningful measurement framework right from the top. Not so we can tell them how it did, but we can help to tell them what they should be doing next, and really what they should even be doing mid-flight and during a campaign. So I think there's a lot of unevenness in the market of how ready people are to operationalize that and make it a reality. But I can say pretty categorically that brands have gotten on the same page, that they understand the importance of having measurement planning right at the top of your marketing and media and building it right into the, what has historically been the planning phase of media, and carrying it all the way through to campaign execution, optimization, and yes, reporting. But reporting is more of a review of all of the stuff that we've been talking about all along at this point.
Right. And that kind of leads to very naturally to another question. I mean, measurement is much more than reporting. It's actually giving you insights that you can act on in real time. And so, Justin, I wanted to ask you about the fact that, measurement historically has been an output. That's something that gets put on a dashboard. But what's fundamentally changing right now? And what does it take to embed measurement in actual real-time decision-making rather than simply documenting performance after it's already happened?
Yeah, Scott hit on it just now, and I completely agree that because the stakes are so high in this category, right? We're not talking about body wash, and I love body wash as much as the next guy, but what we're talking about is educating, patients and HCPs about what treatments are available, and you need to make sure that that is reaching the right audience at the right time. What I fear is that a lot of marketers in the categories, because of the challenges in measurement today, which we can talk about, that they're willing to settle for good enough or fast enough. And because of the stakes we're talking about, I think that's the wrong approach. You need to make sure that the signal you're getting is accurate, that you're reflecting what's actually going on with your media spend, that the right message is being delivered where it needs to go at the right time. And then most importantly, that the way you receive that intelligence is actionable. That not only if you see that you are making an impact in the right places, okay, double down on that in the moment. Or if you're opposite, you're not hitting the impact that you'd like to see, that you're not getting the reach that you desired, that you can make adjustments, and that your partners and that your consultative partners in this are able to give you that insight, and not just an insight for insight's sake, but to make you smarter and actually turn that into money moving around as a result.
So you're talking about a shift, right? And Scott, where do organizations tend to struggle with that shift? Is it a tech challenge, or is it more about culture and workflow?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, I guess, first of all, the only thing I would add to what Justin has to say is, given the heat in Cannes this week, I think body wash can be a very high stakes category. He's doing well, by the way. We're sitting very close here.
I can't smell it.
I think it is both a technology and an operational challenge. And I don't mean to be a little bit wishy-washy with my answer. However, I would say largely the technology is there, and we've come a long way. And even in the 8-ish years that I've been working very closely with the pharma space, I've seen a lot of movement in the tech space. Obviously, we're seeing a huge revolution in that right now. So I don't necessarily see the technology as the big barrier, except for the fact that you have to make really sophisticated technology decisions as a brand and as an agency to make this stuff happen. I mean, we're talking about it a little bit like it's almost like it's easy. And, a company like IQVIA exists because it is very much not easy in this category in particular. But I do think that the bigger challenge is on the kind of cultural, organizational, operational side across the ecosystem, but just talking specifically about brands a little bit, you often see these things being executed very differently between things like HCP, healthcare professional marketing, and direct-to-consumer patient marketing. Those teams often are not collaborating to the degree that would be optimal, let's say. And I think that has a big impact on what we're ultimately able to measure and what we're able to how we're able to move the needle for that client. So, for instance, if we go too fast on the direct-to-patient, direct-to-consumer commercialization side of that equation, and we have not done the measurable, meaningful work on the healthcare professional side to seed that audience, it's kind of like planting a garden in the desert. Like you've got to bring those two things together. And you hear a lot of talk in our space right now about omnichannel. The most important piece of omnichannel for me is bringing those two sides of the marketing coin together.
So, what you guys are both talking about is a lot of the traditional silos are being removed. And one of the things that, from my perspective, is most striking is that the silo that had existed between, hey, look, here's a marketing campaign that is directly aimed at consumers, DTC, and here's another one that's aimed at HCPs. Things are starting to merge there a little bit. What peril do companies put themselves in when they're not paying attention to that membrane becoming much more permeable?
Context and ability to meaningfully optimize on the intelligence that you can acquire. What I love about the point Scott made is, I talk about fragmentation in measurement all the time. We know that screens are fragmented, inventory is fragmented, data is fragmented. So are frequently investment teams. Could be DTC versus HCP, could be linear television versus CTV. Both of those are cases where it would make so much more sense and be better for the end client and the way that you gather intelligence to unfragment those things, to look at TV in aggregate. If the consumer at home is not thinking, I'm watching linear TV or I'm watching CTV, they're thinking I'm watching TV.
Right.
The pharma marketer should be able to understand how their DTC strategy and their HCP strategy work together and create the type of meaningful moment where a campaign that has reached both of those populations will be more effective when they are happening, when they are exposed on both of those populations. But if we can prove that, and IQVIA has shown that, that's only as good as your ability to then act upon that. And if you're siloed in the way that you're planning and investing in each of those populations, you'll be limited in how you can actually take advantage of those insights.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen that? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, it's as simple as we have an ability to run impact effectiveness on a campaign and how it is DTC targeted campaign as well as an HCP targeted campaign. And because those methodologies are roughly similar enough, we can deduplicate those and look at how the impact on actual conversion is happening when both of those populations have been reached as a part of that meaningful diagnosis moment. And that lift can then be planned for as you try to understand the dynamics of how those two populations intersect from a media exposure standpoint across all measurable inventory, digital, TV, CTV, and beyond.
So I dare say that the job was a little bit easier for you guys when you were talking about very big, homogenous audiences. But, as therapies become much more narrowly targeted and the audience for that therapy becomes, smaller, measurement and reaction to measurement becomes a lot more complex. So precision is even more important. Scott, what should brands be thinking about when they're looking for greater precision in measurement while still operating in a HIPAA compliant, privacy first way? What's responsible precision look like?
Yeah, I think the great thing about this space, and I think often we characterize this as a challenge, is the level of regulation that we're dealing with, because it is there for a very good reason. And I think we can all appreciate and understand if there's any category that we want to be appropriately regulated, it's health. And certainly things like pharmaceutical treatments, where again, the stakes are high, not just for the manufacturers and the brand, but the stakes are very high for the patients as well, because this is in many cases an opportunity to access what it could be a life-saving treatment in a lot of these different categories. So I think the responsible way is to continue to follow those regulations that are already there for us. And I think that is one of the really nice things about this space is that it's very clear and laid out, like what we can and cannot do. And believe me, we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about all of the things that we can and cannot do. I think for brands, and this is something that crosses categories, but is certainly true when I think about pharmaceutical marketing, is letting go of some of the legacy thinking, particularly in the media space. So we're an independent media agency. We do some other things, but that's really our heritage and our core business. There's a lot of thinking in that specific space of, my media, my working media should be, 70% or more. And I never want to spend more than 30% on creative and strategy and fees, irrespective of the size of the budget. And that often applied to 9-figure plus budgets, and then it's kind of like scaled down to that thinking even when you're dealing with much more precise and ultimately smaller media budgets. I think what agencies and brands and marketers really need to focus on is like, what are the best use of those resources to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? So for example, we will often, as the media agency, do a segmentation of a patient population, or we will receive that segmentation work from another partner. And we do a lot of work with partner agencies in this space as well. And we'll look at them. Great. There's so many insights that you've come up with this segmentation. We have so many great things that we can target. We have so many great things that we can say. And then we'll end up getting one set of creative to speak to all 7 or 12 of those, which kind of begs the question of like, why did we even bother doing that work in the first place? So I think we've got to rethink those things. And we often will talk to clients about like, well, now we're getting like, what's my percentage of working media versus the question of like, is this media actually working and doing what we wanted it to do? And I think particularly when you have precise populations, your media spend, and people might not expect me to say this as someone who works for a media agency, but your media spend might be a much smaller portion of that entire effort, because now you're doing an omni-channel approach that's tying together really sophisticated measurement from the healthcare professional all the way through to point of care and patient marketing, and bringing that together in a really, really meaningful way with a population that instead of, hundreds or tens of millions is maybe hundreds of thousands or even less. And so the amount that you're spending on media doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're able to drive those outcomes within a very, very particular and precise population.
You're right. I think people would be surprised to hear you say that, but it's great transparency.
Well, and I would build on that too, is what it speaks to is how critical the quality of the data input is. And as systems become more automated, we have an AI first world. What will start to rise to the top of importance in what we do is data quality. And the 3 things that you need for that to happen are customer and privacy, which is where everything always starts, as Scott just mentioned. The second is scale. So it's funny, you're talking about things are getting more precise. You have to have scale in order to do that. And then finally, accuracy. That not only do you have a lot of data, but that that data is trusted and is reflecting reality. When you have all 3 of those ingredients, then you can start to navigate a world where you have to be a lot more precise because of the types of patient populations that you're talking about. The incidence rates can be very low, but that means you can only reach those incidence rates and turn it into a reportable sample if you have a high starting scale. And it makes the accuracy that much more important. You have to make sure that you are actually reflecting this hard to find, hard to pinpoint type of condition.
So yeah, data, AI is only as good as the data that you put into it. And
Amen, brother.
And it would not be a discussion about marketing in 2026 if we didn't talk about AI. So my question for you, Justin, is where are you seeing it genuinely improve not just measurement, but downstream from that, or maybe upstream from that, the decision making, because that's what this is all about. And, there's AI and that's great, the output and everything else. Where is human involvement still absolutely necessary?
So AI is changing everybody's professional lives by the day. Makes us more efficient, helps us operate more quickly, helps us generate insight that we may not even have thought about, which is all great. As you said, you still need the human involvement because you need 2 things. The first is what I just said. You still need to ensure that the data input going into these AI algorithms is where it needs to be, or the insight that you get from an AI algorithm, I would argue, will be meaningless. And actually worse than that, it may iterate on itself and continue to create more data off of bad data. And you're in this endless doom loop of bad intelligence. So humans need to ensure that the data input in the first place is rock solid. The second thing is you need to have some sort of oversight that an insight coming out of something like a AI algorithm is meaningful and passes the sniff test. I think it is still, again, the stakes are too high to just take for granted that something that you pump into an AI engine with and call it, set it and forget it and call it a day. I think you cannot assume that what's coming out of that is the truth without human-led validation and human-led integration with the overall strategy.
So are there risks at play here, in implementing AI that you think the industry might be underestimating?
Yeah, I think it's implementing, going all in on AI without equal attention on the inputs to that AI.
Good point.
Building on all of that, I'll agree with everything that Justin just said. I think the promise of AI in the execution of the media and the marketing is that we can get to decisions faster. And that's something that has really been plaguing the pharma media and marketing industry in particular. So the planning cycles in pharma tend to be much longer than a lot of other categories because it's historically has taken a long time to get that readout of the data and to understand how things are performing. So one of the things that AI can do is it can get us to those decisions faster. We can iterate on plans. And yes, I agree, there still will be humans in the loop helping to make those decisions, making sure that we have the right inputs. But, we can take quarterly planning down to monthly or even weekly planning. And, the whole concept of media planning with AI is changing dramatically as well. These are no longer kind of like we're stopping what we're doing and planning and starting a new cycle, but it's become very iterative. And that's the thing I think about AI in this category in particular that excites me the most is we can start to shorten some of those windows that I think have made it really, really hard to do true optimization in this category historically.
This has been a really interesting conversation, and I want to wrap it up by asking you guys if there's one assumption that you think healthcare marketers should challenge about how they're currently measuring success. Like, what would it be, Justin?
Most generally, I would say, don't assume that what has been true will remain being true, especially around what we're capable of doing. We can unfragment more fragmented inventory than you may think. We can measure hard to find or low incidence conditions in a very granular way, more than you'd think. So as a result, ensure that the data inputs, your identity strategy that are going into those opportunities are where they need to be so that you can achieve what is achievable that I just described.
Scott, I'm going to give you the last word on that.
Yeah, I think from the media side of things, I would say don't assume that if you're able to reach your patient population and get the right amount of reach and frequency there, and even if you're able to convince the patient population, that the rest is going to fall into place. I think everything that we've talked about in terms of understanding measurement and the tools that are at our disposal with modern media execution, it doesn't just allow us, I think it creates a responsibility for us to look at that whole picture. So you have to take a true omni-channel approach between your HCP and your patient marketing, because when they meet at that moment of truth, both of those things really have to work to meet your desired business outcomes.
This is great. Anything else you guys want to add?
It's great to be potting on the Riviera.
Well, listen, this has been a really interesting conversation, guys, and thank you for taking time out and cooling off a little bit. I assume it's really, really hot out there. You've been listening to a special edition of the MM+M podcast. I'm Steve Madden, editor-at-large for MM+M. My guests today have been Justin Rosen, head of measurement product for IQVIA Digital Guest, and Scott Ensign, chief strategy officer at Butler Till. Justin, Scott, thanks a lot.
Thanks.